Right now on Tech Radio, we're unlocking the rental market.
Hi, I'm Artemis. I am a computer-generated AI voice, and you're listening to Tech Radio.
Every week online and on air with RT Radio, we bring you the very latest in tech from Ireland and across the world. You're welcome to episode 1033, looking back on the 7 biggest stories of the week, including the world's most famous non-French tech billionaire, and someone has had the gumption to say no to Google. Whoops. Plus, our guest today is Vinny Glennon, who'll be telling us about his new website, which helps you find out what the rent was for a previous tenant and rates landlords.
From techcentral.ie, this is Tech Radio with Dusty Rhodes and Niall Kitson.
My name's Dusty. Joining me as always, our editor-in-chief, Niall Kitson. I suppose the big story of the week dominating the headlines has been Pavel Durov, arrested in Paris.
Yeah, so who's this guy?
He is the guy who founded Telegram. Now, there's a number of these WhatsApp, Messenger, iMessage type things that are supposed to be super, super, duper, duper secret, all right? And it is an app that has been used around the world by people who want to keep things secret. So basically what happened was this guy landed in his private jet in North Paris and was arrested immediately. And because he is such a big name and a big noise, because when he started Telegram, he got into trouble with the Russian authorities, and that's why he had to leave Russia. Now he's living in the United Arab Emirates in Dubai. And they were thinking, well, this is a political arrest. You know, somebody in the EU wants him, some of the Russians want him, the people from Dubai want him, who knows, all right? But they said no. French police said that they want him for complicity. Okay, important word that, now, complicity in distributing child porn, illegal drugs and hacking software, all right? And essentially what they're saying is that the platform that he designed, Telegram, is being used by unscrupulous people to distribute child porn, illegal drugs and hacking software. He's not doing it himself, but his platform is being used for it. So they have decided in France that they are going to make an investigation for him. And the way that it works over there is that if you're under investigation, they can take your passport away. You cannot leave the country and you have to sign on at a police station or gendarme every couple of days. So he's kind of stuck in France. But this is not a bad thing for our Pavel. Because despite being called Pavel Durov, he is French.
Okay.
He has no French family. He doesn't live in France. He does speak French. But because he's got so much money, I am guessing that he was able to buy himself a French passport.
Oh, we had a scheme like that for years, didn't we? We had the golden passport.
Many countries have it. He is a citizen of the United Arab Emirates for the same reason. And he is also a citizen of, it's one of the islands over in the Caribbean, I think it is. St. Kitts or something like that. The West Indies, that's it. So, yeah, he's a citizen of a number of countries. And you know what? If you had that much money, having a French passport or an Irish passport or whatever it happens to be, that gets you into the EU. So why wouldn't you? When you have all the money in the world.
Right, well, when you've got the money, okay. I'm a little bit confused by this. Okay. Effectively, the French have detained a man who is responsible for the platform, but not the content.
Yep.
Do you think?
Yes, that's what they are saying officially. Okay. What's your problem?
Well, here's the thing, and maybe this is overexposure to the American way of thinking. If you've got a platform, you're not necessarily responsible for the content that goes up on it. Now, in Europe, I think we're a little bit better on that. We do see an inherent responsibility on the platform owner to police the content, to make sure that objectionable material is taken down. But here's the thing. If your argument is that, okay, we don't necessarily know what's up there because it's anonymous, okay, that's one thing. However, if you know that the material you've got up there is criminal in nature, but the user is anonymous, are you responsible for, taking down that content still, seeing as you don't know the source of it?
You've just raised a point that I hadn't considered myself, okay? Because one of the things about Telegram is that it's one of those secret texting services, all right?
That's it.
It's all encrypted and encoded and nobody can see. So if that's the case, how do the French police know that Telegram is being used to distribute child porn, illegal drugs and hacking software?
Well, or how do they know it's being used to do those things within France or within the EU?
That's exactly what I'm saying. It's very interesting. So I think actually kind of the more I chat with this about you, I think maybe this is a political story.
Yeah.
Who knows? Who knows?
I mean, the interesting thing with so-called anonymous messaging services is, how anonymous are they? Because we've had quite a few of them over time. I mean, you might remember years ago in Pakistan, BlackBerry Messenger was all a buzz because its messages were stored on private servers.
Yeah.
That, if you wanted access to a message on BlackBerry Messenger, they couldn't do it in Pakistan because BlackBerry owned their own servers. Now, Apple are famously cagey when it comes to sharing messages because they say, actually, everything is on device. It's nothing to do with us. We have no servers. And I think WhatsApp is pretty much the same. It's all on device as well. So Telegram is kind of interesting in that they do have servers and they do store messages and they do keep an eye on the content that's up there, which kind of makes it less secure in a lot of ways. I mean, go on.
No, I was just going to say, I was speaking to somebody, a friend of mine who's into all this kind of app stuff and the super duper secret message sending and all that kind of stuff. And he said Telegram is not the best. In fact, actually, Telegram may be the worst for all the reasons that you're saying, okay? Because you said that these things, they encode stuff on device, all right? And then the transmission, nobody can read it. He says one of the problems, he said, apparently with Telegram is that the app will send all of the keystrokes to the server. So even if you don't send a message, all of those keystrokes have been sent to the server and probably stored on it, possibly.
For what use?
There you go. Also, they have a complete copy of the message kept on Telegram servers as well. There is a feature in it where you can send secret chats which self-destruct after X amount of time, but it's hidden away. It's day-to-day use. Stuff is kept on the server, which is, and now kind of WhatsApp, iMessage and stuff like that. As you say, it's on device. They say that nothing is kept on the server, but they are private companies, so we don't know. So the advice from my man in the know at the Department of Foreign Affairs, I'm not saying any more.
Okay.
He says the best option to use is a Signal.
Right.
And the reason being because it's open source. And I love open source software because if there is any backdoors or anything tricky or dicky or anything like that, it'll come out.
Yeah. The one thing I will say, and it's not even a defense of Telegram because, I'm not really interested in doing that. But one of the ways in which it has found its niche in sort of the world of normies that yourself and myself inhabit is in looking at channels to do with ongoing conflicts like the special military operation
in Ukraine.
Where people have been keeping track of Russian military bloggers through Telegram and getting wonderful insight into how the conflict is viewed in Russia and how people feel and report when things are not going particularly well for them. So, Telegram has certainly proven its worth there, but again, it does come down to the content. But if we don't know where the content is coming from, I don't know, does that mean you get to prosecute someone absolutely anywhere?
Well, you're getting into a whole argument that has been there billions of times before. Telegram have come out and they said that they do adhere to the DMA in the EU, and they abide by all the laws of consumer secrecy, all that kind of stuff. The owners of those platforms, Musk, etc., and so on and so forth, are kind of hands up, going, "How can we build a platform? How can we control the content that people put on it?"
Well, you can start paying people to moderate it.
Well, there you go. All right, but it's like the telephone companies have come out in years beforehand, kind of going, "Well, how can we stop people making phone calls to arrange, robbing banks or whatever it was they used to do back in the day?"
Here's the thing. What? Here's the thing, though, and I'm glad you raised that as a comparison, because what happens if you've got someone that is under suspicion for a crime? What can you get done? You can tap their phone. Right?
Yes.
Or as with the Graham Dwyer case, mobile phone location data was very, very important. And, through, a legal process was accessed. So when you have something like Telegram, which purports to be anonymous messaging, when you can potentially subpoena them to get the information that you want, it's not terribly private. I mean, you can anonymize who sent it, but I'm sure that can be, if you can prove that somebody is user 45321, then you're it's not particularly anonymous. That's why I think it's almost quaint sounding software. It doesn't sound like it's particularly good at what it's meant to do from an anonymizing perspective.
As my mum would say, there's no smoke without fire. And I think what we're seeing at the moment is just a lot of the smoke covering up whatever the hell is really going on in the background. So we keep an eye on that. Elsewhere in news here in Ireland, somebody has stood up to Google and said, no, you can't.
It's a very rare thing to happen. What happened?
Certainly is. South Dublin County Council have been working with Google. They have got a site over Grange Castle Business Park, okay? They've got 2 data centres, I believe, in there at the moment. And they were putting in their plans for the third one. And South Dublin County Council had a report done and then came back and said, based on the report, no, you can't proceed with the third part of the plan.
Okay. Now,
the reasons given, they said that there was insufficient capacity on the electric grid at the moment to cope with it. The report said about the climate effect, because this is another thing that comes in. This is kind of interesting. It said the climate effect in the short term was not really a concern because by the year 2030, 80% of electricity in Ireland will be renewable.
Okay.
Which I thought was an interesting fact. And then I think the other reason why they kind of threw it out was they said there was a general lack of detail. And I've sat on many committees with applications from people coming in for such and such. And you know what? A general lack of detail is something that will get you thrown out, because if the people who are supposed to be going yay or nay or something are asking questions and the answers aren't in the document, just get sent back.
I suppose that points to a general sense of entitlement by Google.
For Google?
That they're, okay, phase 1 and 2, no problem. We got our data centers, copy paste, let's get our third one in. And that will do that without looking at the cumulative effect of having 3 data centers. That could be what happened. I mean, that sounds reasonable enough. We were talking about the amount of energy data centers take up a couple of weeks ago. Yeah. And it's basically data. Is it the combined data centers in Ireland use up as much electricity as every home? Is that right?
I think so. It's something incredible. Like the data centers alone use something like a third of electricity in the country. Don't quote me on that, but it's an amazing fact like that where it stops you in your tracks and you go, what? Yeah. Just data centers? And then you start thinking, on what? I suppose if you think about all the electricity and all the machines that are running in there and then the lights and the networking, and then you've of course got to cool it all down.
Yep.
And even though, we have a mild climate and stuff here, it still needs to be cool. And it just uses a huge chunk of electricity. So I think it's a bit, my reading on this, right, is that Google were just a bit possibly presumptuous, as you say. It's kind of, yeah, this is the third one, blah, blah. The other two went through. Just give them that. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
All right. And I think it's kind of come back to bite them a little bit. I have a feeling that, I mean, Google aren't stupid and South Dublin County Council are definitely not stupid. All right. And if there was a three-pronged plan on that site and everybody knew about it and everybody knew where we were going, well, then I would imagine that there's some kind of general agreement about it. And this has come back as a no because the detail wasn't filled in. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, because I mean, these things are big projects. If I recall correctly, there's like 800 construction jobs at stake. Yeah. But then, like, it really goes off. I don't want to say it goes off cliff, but I mean, they don't require that many people to actually run. I think there's like 50 full-time jobs there like just to keep people going. So, as a construction project, they're absolutely huge. Yeah. So it's interesting to see somebody say no to big tech in Ireland.
Yes, indeed. I'd love to be able to stand up to say no to Google myself, but I just think
on principle.
I know what they'd tell me to do. What else is making headlines in Ireland this week? Oh my God! Credit card cyber attacks in Fota Wildlife Park of all places. What do you know about this story?
This is one of the things that really annoys me about cybercrime is, you know, by all means, pick on big tech, pick on big companies that really should know better. Find people that have underinvested in cybersecurity and put people at risk. I mean, sometimes, you know, you can't have a lot of sympathy for that kind of thing. However, when you get into places that perform a public service like the HSE, or places that are non-profit making, or places that genuinely add to people's lives, like Fota Wildlife Park. I mean, they experienced a cyber attack, which has taken a lot of personal data, especially credit cards. So if you have a strange transaction on your credit card and happen to have booked through Fota Wildlife Park in the last few months, the chances are that's a fraudulent transaction and you may have to change your card. Fota came out themselves and said, look, you probably should change your card. I mean, this information has been scooped up. It's been put out on the dark web. It is, you know, it's up there for use by the highest bidder, if you will. And the highest bidder may not be offering an awful lot of money. So, you know, it's one of these unfortunate events that does happen.
But now, don't use the word unfortunate because we have had a ton of other stories that directly relates into this, okay? One of them on techcentral.ie during the week was about an Explio survey about Irish businesses who have paid a ransom, okay? Now, I think this is amazing, right? Irish businesses who have paid a ransom in the last year, give me a fraction of all businesses that have done that.
Okay, bearing in mind that, you know, it's a qualified sample, so it's not all businesses. Yeah, but of all you would imagine a very small percentage. You would imagine. I would say about 10%.
A third of Irish businesses in this survey have paid a ransom in the last year. And the same number, this is where it gets worse, right? The same number build ransom money into their budget.
Yeah, I've heard of that before. Building ransoms into budgets, but also holding Bitcoin as a means of paying off ransoms as well. That seems to be quite common too.
Then there was another story, and I'm going off the top of my head on this one, to say that a lot of Irish websites were not technically sufficient, as in they were wide open. All right. So we're seeing that with Fota Wildlife Park, it's not focusing on them. We're looking at nearly half of Irish businesses are running insecure websites. A third of Irish businesses have paid a ransom to somebody in the last year. A whole load of them are building ransom money into their budget. What happened to prevention?
Yeah, well, what has happened, and I think one of the figures you're getting there is from the .ie annual report that came out there about inadequate websites. What has happened over the last few years was during COVID, an awful lot of businesses had to go online very quickly so they could maintain their business, so they could keep buying and selling, keep transacting. Now I think we're getting into a stage where people are dealing with the long-term cost of maintaining a viable website. And it's not something you can, pay for once and you're done. It's not a fire and forget thing. No. You do have to keep updating your technology. You do have to keep making sure that you're secure and you're able to provide a good service to your customers and a safe one to your customers. So I think on one level, I think .ie we're looking at places that still don't offer transactions on their websites, but also websites that are insecure as well. So there are a lot of, bearing in mind that most of the businesses in Ireland are SMEs, small to medium. Well, in any country,
businesses.
Yeah. So this is something that will happen. Some things will will end up by the wayside, particularly if companies are struggling to pay wages, for example, something very, very basic like that.
Yeah.
So it's fascinating stat, and I hope SMEs will sort of learn not from other people's mistakes, but develop a proper strategy involving recurring investment in their website.
And that's a very expensive thing to start getting into. But nevertheless, last thing on this particular story is I learned something this week, and I love it. It made me smile about all the different kind of scams that they have going on. So voice cloning is becoming more and more common. All right. Yeah. Phishing we've had for years and stuff like that. But whaling is something I never heard of.
Whaling. Okay.
Whaling is a great name, right? A whaling is a phishing attack on a senior figure within the company. All right. So phishing is when you get like kind of the cleaner, some kind of a programmer, or the equivalent of the postman boy or whatever happens to be somebody low on the thing. But if you get somebody who's at the top of the chain, well, then now you're whaling, baby.
Wow. Which is what we saw in Hong Kong a couple of months ago, wasn't it?
Yeah. It was that story was guy sitting there, and they had an AI image video of the CEO who was on a video call with him saying, I need you to transfer 44 million, get it done in the next 30 minutes. It's like, kind of, if that was you, what do? I signed him. He was on my screen, it's crazy. Listen, I've got a nice little story to wrap up with, which come from, or a bit of inspired by Nintendo Direct, which is on during the week. But there's another shocking story that you came up with during the week to do with YouTube. Tell me about this.
Yeah, well, sort of to do with YouTube. It's actually a very upsetting case of sextortion involving a man who was posing as a famous YouTuber in order to reach out and make contact with women and convince them into sending him material of a very compromising nature. So 29-year-old Muhammad Zain ul Abidin Rashid blackmailed hundreds of victims across 20 countries, ultimately pleading guilty to, it was about 120 charges involving just under 300 people. So absolutely massive number of victims involved. Targeted almost 200 people under the age of 16 as well. So he wasn't very discerning in terms of the ages of the people he extorted. So what's interesting about this is that he's actually been under investigation for a couple of years. So this is the charges were first filed against him, I think, in 2020. So this was very much a long game. So he has been convicted in Australia. He is going to be in jail until 2033. One would hope he does not make, does not achieve any sort of parole or early release, because this sort of behaviour speaks to a particularly pathological personality. It's not the sort of thing you're going to be reformed from. But this case began in 2020 when this individual was reported by some people as a scammer, as someone that was impersonating someone in a popular YouTuber, not named in any of the reports that I have seen. And ultimately, he was done for 660 offences across nearly 300 victims. I mean, come on. That is absolutely repellent behaviour. Yeah. So, I mean, 17 years, it makes you wonder, does the punishment fit that level, that sort of scale of crime? I'm not sure it does.
Listen, yeah, well, I suppose when you come to punishments and stuff like that in court, does any punishment?
Well, I think we're still, I mean, evidently the judiciary across the world is still learning the rules when it comes to the amount of trauma that is inflicted on people when it comes to these kind of cases. I mean, you've got basically 300 people, almost 200 kids, kids under the age of 16, being adversely affected by this for forever.
Yeah.
And on the internet, they say everything follows you around forever and nothing is ever truly deleted. So if you could imagine material of a very compromising nature hanging over your head forever, I mean, 17 years comes across as being very lenient. But if that's the framework the judiciary has to work with at the moment, well, certainly questions need to be asked.
All right, let's move on to our last story of the week then. On a lighter note, Nintendo had their direct reveal conference event or whatever during the week. And now I didn't see it because gaming's not my thing. Do you follow Nintendo, or that's not your end of gaming, is it?
No, not quite my end of gaming. Right. It's far too happy for me. So.
Oh, you're revealing a lot about yourself there, my dark friend.
So tell me what happened.
No, it's just interesting. One of the new games that's coming out it's called Date Everything. Okay, and
right.
They call it a game, but it's kind of an interactive thing where basically you are virtualizing or humanizing objects within your home, and then you date them.
I'm lost here. What do you mean date them?
Your Hoover will appear in this game as, a personality and will talk to you via text and all kinds of things, and voice, I think, as well. And basically, if you like what the Hoover is saying, and then you respond, and then the Hoover responds to you, and so on and so forth. And then I think the goal of the game is to fall in love with your Hoover, or your food mixer, or your air fryer. What?
That's so weird. That is so weird.
It's very out there. And I kind of thought, man, that's out there. But a couple of other things that I've been looking at, which I henceforth, where did that come from? Also thought was a bit weird, but ties in with this. Check out a website called character.ai, okay? Basically, character.ai, it's an app on your phone, and there's all kinds of characters on it, okay? There's a mental health professional. There's a character called Ghost, who's a spy. And you can text messages to all of them, all right? And if you get really into it, you can call them and you can talk to them, all right? They're all AI now. They're all AI.
Yeah,
Nuts.
I'm not sure I'm into that, Dusty.
No, but that's what I'm telling you. This is, they say that even though there's 8 billion people on the planet, the world is getting a lonelier and lonelier place. And are you surprised when people go out for dinner together and they spend the night looking at their phones?
Yeah.
There's another app. It's called Aspect.ai. It's a chat app, all right? Works exactly like, kind of WhatsApp or maybe Instagram or something about that. But the same thing on that is, right? They're more normal people, all right? But everybody on the app is AI. You're the only real person.
Yeah, Dusty, this is really creeping me out. I mean, come on.
Well, here's one last one then to really creep you out, okay?
Okay.
It's a new device and it's called Friend, all right? So Friend is a little device that you wear. It's always listening. It's picking
like
up
Alexa.
What you're saying. Yes, indeed. All right. But you're walking around with this thing. All right. And then just out of the blue, no preconceived times or anything like that, Friend will then send you a text to your phone and start chatting with you and asking you questions about what went on during the day. Oh, I saw you met Elaine today. How is she?
Huh.
You're texting back and
Okay.
you're going, yeah, she's great, blah, blah, blah. She said such and such. And then it'll come back with a follow-up question. It's like, okay. And all I'm thinking of, right, is because you don't know when this friend is going to text, I can absolutely see a situation where you're out with a friend, as in a human being that you like and you're conversing with, and then your phone goes beep. You go, oh, hang on a minute.
Yeah.
And you take a question from your AI friend and you reply to it, ignoring your real life human friend right in front of you.
Yeah. Not into that, Dusty. It's like, do you know what that reminds me of? Do you remember Tamagotchis?
Yes, there you go.
People used to get obsessed with their Tamagotchi, and they would stop paying attention to the world around them because their Tamagotchi needed feeding or something like that. Is this a Tamagotchi of today, is it?
And I've got probably another version of it. Yeah, there you go. The more things change, the more things stay the same. So they say. Anyway, listen, that is our news report for this week. As always, thank you, Niall.
Delivering Irish tech news since 2006, this is Tech Radio.
Whether it's an apartment, a house, or even a co-living space, the first thing on anyone's mind when renting is, how much does it cost? Followed by, well, what if something goes wrong? Vinny Glennon is using his own software engineering skills to answer these questions by developing a website he's just launched called howmuchrent.com. He had a chat during the week with Niall Kitson about how publicly available information and the experience of tenants can help you find the best place to live and the best landlords to look after you.
Vinny, we've all got a long and storied history when it comes to accommodation, when it comes to finding places to live. And, you know, as individuals, we've got lots of stories to tell, but properties have their own stories to tell as well. I mean, you know, any property goes through a natural life cycle from the point at which it's built to potentially the point at which it's torn down. You're kind of tracking both. So tell us a little bit about your approach to this project.
So thank you very much for having me on. So on my website, howmuchrent.com, I want to encourage a rental transparency. So when you are looking to rent a place, you have very little visibility into the past history of this property. And I believe that every renter has a story to share, which is good or bad, and that gets forgotten about the moment that they move out. So I wanted to create a website that allows the current tenants to leave a review for the next tenants to come along. And that includes, you know, what's the living conditions there is like. For example, if they had found some ranges in the garden, something like this, you know, access to the nearest shops, etc. I do want to always stress that I keep the reviews focused on the property rather than on the landlord themselves. And there's a few reasons for this. For example, landlords may change and they may move from a rented house into a private dwelling. And an interesting question actually for your listeners is, if a house is sold and put into private hands, should this historical information that the house was rented be available for people to see? Is that in the public interest? These are kind of interesting questions that are raising from the kind of rental transparency project. When you have a property and you're looking to acquire like a property, you have a public initiative called the Public Price Register, which shows you the historical prices that the property had, when it was sold and how much it was sold for. But when you rent, you have no historical information to go back on. For example, was the last person paying 30%, 40% less than you? Or is that actually the price dropping and you're getting a great deal for the current market space? And I also think it's quite useful just to have those reviews in place.
Yeah, and getting that sort of dispassionate picture of the market, there is two sides to it. There is the individual leaving sort of their narrative, which can be potentially quite emotive depending on their experience. But you've also got the hard data to work with as well. So tell us about your approach to dealing with both, because I imagine, especially when it comes to testimonials, I mean, you don't have the time or the resources to be devoting to accounts of individual landlords. So how do you manage to strike that balance of getting information people need while making sure it's within a certain code of conduct?
So I try to approach this problem on kind of the technical side because I have a technical background. So anytime a reviewer adds their review. I just check it for, I guess, keywords or kind of the emotions of the language that's being used. I want to keep the conversation focused on the property itself. And there's lots of other areas in the form, like if you want to track BER or if you got your rent back on time, if you had been evicted and the possible reasons for it. So collecting quite a rich data set in this regard. On the property side, one of the easiest ways I found actually about doing this is Ireland has great websites for advertising properties and seeing the pictures and seeing the current prices, but none of these websites show the historical prices that this rental was going for. So I'm going to the likes of daft.ie and every single day getting the latest properties that are advertised by the landlord and just using that information and ingesting it into the system. This way then I can have a historical record over the last year and a half and show, I guess, some trends that I can see. Some places the prices of properties are going up and down. There's a couple of other websites I was using, like Excellent Initiatives. I think Stay for Home, where you can rent a house for 70 or 100 euros a month, but you're basically providing elderly care. You're providing support to an elderly person living there, everything outside of medical care. So just that they have someone maybe once a day for an hour just to chat to, and at the fall that they have someone in the house to contact. And I think that's an excellent initiative or an excellent solution to kind of free up vacancies or rooms in elderly people's houses and taking care of them as well, and taking care that's of their well-being.
That's a fascinating point there about different modes of people living together, I suppose, whether it's a house share, whether it's performing a public service. Have you found, have your horizons been broadened in this respect, looking at sort of different living arrangements?
As it's just a solo endeavor and it's all the information provided for free, I guess the main challenge was kind of collecting the information over time to be of use and trying to map out different data sources. So there was an interesting data point, I think, but I would require like journalists to look into it. For example, on Daft, I can see that there are like full properties being advertised, but I ended up mapping 200,000 or 300,000 properties that have been registered with the RTB. And I can tell that some of these properties have not been registered with the RTB, but they have full houses for rent on Daft. And if they are being fully rented like this and they have a track record of renting over the last 6 months, in my belief, that they are in breach of the current renting guidelines, and that should be something that should be investigated by the government. Another example is I'm tracking about 700 landlords which are advertising their property at a rate that's above the 2% within rent pressure zones. Some of them up to maybe 20, 30% increases. And I've contacted the RTB and contacted one or two TDs that also try to contact them. And the line is that the government's not responsible for RTB. The RTB is an independent organization, and then the RTB just doesn't really seem to follow up on this. So I don't have a strong position on like rent pressure zones or anything like this, but I do believe that if we have an existing law, it should be enforced rigorously, which I hope would then discourage the increases of prices that we see across the country, or the rules should be just changed and relaxed. We live in this kind of strange way, which I think the Irish quite like. It's kind of turning kind of blind eye to us. We see that the prices are going up, but some people are happy that some people definitely aren't happy with this. So it's trying. I don't want to like force a judgment on it. I'm just showing all the possible information. I don't want to come across as anti-landlord in any way or anti-tenant. My best take is here's all the information and let people deduce whatever summaries or opinions from the information. A nice example of this is the RTB, which deals with court cases between landlords and tenants. I think there's maybe up to 20,000 court cases, and they were all available online, but as PDFs. And it was very hard to see, kind of drill into that information. So one of the steps I did was to digitize or download all the 20,000 documents and digitize it, and being able to figure out a longitude and latitude for each property. So now you can go to the map and just select court cases, and you will see the full summary or full outcome of the case, whether the landlord was evicting the tenant or the tenant was unsociable or causing damage to the house and the landlord took a case against them. And I'm just showing both sides of it. There's absolutely no judgment of any sort. And you can zoom into any street in Dublin or in Ireland, and so you can see what cases has occurred in that property.
One thing that people are very cognizant of when they're looking for a property to rent or purchase is the kind of services that are attached to it. in looking to expand out um, your current project, do you think there's scope for adding layers such as, okay, the following utilities are available in this area, and some of them are pretty good quality and some of them aren't, to maybe give a more holistic view of the viability of a property or how well a property is served in order to give people a more informed vision of how much they should be spending on renting or buying a particular property from that sort of dispassionate view, or indeed from the view of the user. So you might click on to something and go, actually, that, there's a nice history there, nice value there. People seem to get along. Oh, hang on, somebody over here says the broadband in that area is absolutely useless. Is this the kind of expansion you might see down the line?
It's kind of funny you mentioned this. Maybe 20 years ago, I, as a country boy up in Dublin, I had no idea which way the buses were going. So one summer I hopped on every bus with a GPS device to map out all the bus routes, maybe about 3 years before Google Maps had done something like this. Just figure out how to get around it and, for our location, what are the amenities? And then a few years ago, again, looking at accommodation, I was like, okay, well, what properties are near loose lines and train lines, etc. That would be quite handy. Because for some people, living beside a train station would be a massive negative. But for other people that like to travel, that's a massive plus. So it's quite hard to ascribe a value to a house. And also, you could have two identical houses, but the interior is completely renovated. So there's quite hard to digitize, I guess, that. Saying like this is a good value house to get because it depends on the person's preferences.
And so, in looking to get more data or looking for greater engagement on the part of users, what has sort of surprised you the most at the moment? Have you been surprised by the appetite for people to get on and contribute their experiences?
So I guess the most interesting is, again, because just built myself no external funding, and all my conversations about it are basically just through Reddit or through Twitter, that if you're not on one of these services, there's probably a good chance you haven't come across the website. But already 200,000 properties have been viewed. That includes the court cases where people just are naturally curious in what is going on their streets. And, house has always been a kind of big issue for Ireland. So with no advertisement of any sort, I've always been quite surprised at that number. At the moment, there's about 600 properties added to this website with their kind of a bit of rental history by users. A few hundred of them have a review added. So you have to kind of zoom into the map and you'll be able to see the reviews on the streets. I would love to have reviews in every single town in Ireland. And just when I contacted all the kind of councillors, about 6 or 7 councillors responded back to me, and there was a couple of good suggestions that came back from them. One of them is that in each council in Ireland, they are obliged by a law, I think it's the House and Miscellaneous Provisions Act 1992, to show a list of prohibited notices on their website. So a prohibited notice is where a property is banned from being rented out because it's of unsound structure or unclean, or it has a lot of maintenance to do, which the landlord or landlady has not done. So each county council is supposed to put this information in the public domain. And at the moment, only 6 councils in Ireland have this on their website. So one of the kind of motions I like to try and do is increase the rental transparency around this and encouraging each council to promote and to update their list with this information. God forbid someone buys or someone rents a house and then, only 3 months ago it was considered an unsavory place to rent because structurally unsafe. I think this information is very valuable to any renter.
So do you think you'll keep uncovering these sort of data repositories that are actually out there and are being updated? They're just not being made use of. So do you think there's maybe a filing cabinet somewhere with a load of documents just waiting to be digitized and made use of?
So I would love it if the government did this. They didn't rely on an individual and his own means to do this. I think rental transparency can only help reduce the rampant expansion of prices in Ireland. I guess a nice example why I started this is when I was renting in Dublin a few years ago. The landlady had said that she was giving the house to her niece, and for going to college. That's perfect. So when I left the place, about 3 weeks later, I sold back on that after a 30% increase. And I'm certain that this is occurring nationwide, and the government doesn't seem to be acting upon this. But another interesting is see that a lot of political parties have it like in their manifesto, like rental transparency, etc. And I always just like to say, well, this is already built by me, and there's no support of any sort coming in. And another thing I'm quite passionate about is I'd love to be able to have a list of vacancy or derelict houses in Ireland. And I think a couple of political parties have tried to create such a list, but no county council has a list. So we don't know which houses are vacant or derelict. And if you go down the main street of any town, any village, you'll see all these houses, and no one really is sure of the ownership of that, which I just find so surprising. When we're in like such a crisis, and we have all these vacant houses lying there, and they're not being used, and we don't even know who owns them. So it would be great to be able to just show on a map, here are all the vacant houses, and have that updated. Again, it's just a valuable service to the public.
And that was Niall Kitson chatting with Vinnie Lennon. You can check out the website at howmuchrent.com.
This is Tech Radio with Dusty Rhodes and Niall Kitson.
That's it for our show this week. As always, you can check out more stories online we couldn't squeeze into the podcast, including...
apparently Uber is getting an Uber fine in the Netherlands. There's a big acquisition for Irish company Integrity 360, and Meta and Spotify issue a statement about the EU's complicated approach to AI.
You'll find those and more online at techcentral.ie. We're back again next Friday with a brand new show online and on RT Radio 1 Extra. In the meantime, do remember to share our podcast with a friend. Just tell them to look up Tech Radio Ireland on Apple, Spotify, or now also on YouTube. Until next time, from myself, Dusty Rhodes, and from Niall Kitson, have a great weekend.
Remember, you can get the latest Irish tech news with hourly updates, daily newsletters, and more at our website, techcentral.ie. Share the knowledge and invite a friend to listen. Search Apple, Spotify, or YouTube for Tech Radio Ireland, or listen with RTE Radio 1 Extra. Tech Radio is produced by dustpod.io for techcentral.ie. From me, Artemis, live long and prosper.